Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Chris coming at you with another episode to the Beautiful Struggle podcast, and this is episode number 71. And if this is your first time tuning into the Beautiful Struggle podcast, this is the personal development and a business podcast all in one. So if that sounds like something that's interesting to you, please feel free to subscribe and tune in. We drop a new episode every single Monday of the week. With that being said, we have another phenomenal guest on the podcast. He has an amazing story, and he's really doing some amazing things in business and inside the community. Very intelligent young man. You really want to grab a notepad and a pen for this one and pay close attention because I know he's going to drop a lot of wisdom and game for you guys. Before I bring him on, a little bit about my guest. He is the founder of Shine Hard Family, CEO of Bailey Media Group, also a Grow with Google digital coach, and we'll dive into what exactly that is a little later on. He's also a speaker. Most importantly, he's a husband and he's also a father. Welcome, Johnny Bailey.
My man, what's going on? I appreciate the wonderful
Yes,
introduction.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. How you doing, man? How were your holidays?
Man, holidays were great, bro. I was really focusing on self-care. I
Mm-hmm.
unplugged. I had a birthday on the 18th, Christmas on the
Okay.
25th, and then New Year. So I had three back-to-back weekends kind of off, and it was
Wow.
lovely, man.
And I bet you enjoying your time with your little baby girl as well.
Oh, bro, these are golden moments, man. Like they're just
Yeah,
priceless. And I just take pictures and videos and try to just capture every experience that I can.
absolutely. How old is she now?
She's 19 months.
Wow. Okay, she's getting big. That's crazy.
Yeah,
Man, with that being said, I would love to dive into. I always like to start off the podcast with diving into my guests' background and their story and really where they grew up at. I know you said that you're from DC, but you can go ahead and kick it off with your background and you growing up.
sure, bro. Well, I'll try to keep it short, not bore you too
Yeah,
much with all the details, but I'm actually from Petersburg, Virginia.
got you.
Um, and I would probably say, in summary, only child raised by my grandmother. Petersburg is a lower socioeconomic city, predominantly black,
Mm,
and a lot of people don't make it out of there. I come from a military family. My grandparents were military. My dad was in the military for um, about 5 years. Mom and dad got married around pretty young, around 21. Married at
yeah.
20, had me at 21, and then they
Mm,
split up about a year after I was born. So my dad was in Georgia, my mom was in Colorado, and that's kind of how my journey began.
mm,
So I spent the first half of my life, first six, not half, first 6 years of my life, 7 years in Colorado, living in Denver with my mom. And then I spent probably from elementary on back in Petersburg with my grandmother.
mm,
And, that was really my journey as an only child. I remember flying on airplanes from Colorado to Virginia by myself as like a 6 year old
mm.
for the summers, and like people will be very impressed by that on the plane. Like, oh my gosh, like where's your mom? Where's your parents? And it would just be me in the chair and coach, like
Right,
with right on an
right.
airplane. So even from a very young age, I had like a certain level of courage and
Mm.
independence that was kind of thrust upon me. And I think that's kind of stuck with me through.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny because when I was young, it wasn't as far as a distance as Colorado and to you said St. Petersburg, but when I was a kid, I was living in Oregon, Portland, Oregon for a while, and I would always hop on a plane. I was probably like 8, 9 years old and going to LA by myself. And the same thing, you have a little bit of like independence and you like, okay, I can do this on my own. I'm a little kid, but I can do it, you know? So but that's impressive. You was only 6 years old. That's crazy. So where did you go to high school at?
I went to high school in a city called Colonial Heights in Virginia.
Got you. Got you.
What's interesting about my high school is that in Petersburg is an all black city, and I stayed in that school system from fourth grade all the way to eighth grade. And then 8th grade, I moved to Colonial Heights, which is a neighboring city, but it's an all-white town. So that school is predominantly white. So I went from this all-black school to this all-white school, and that's kind of how I transitioned into high school, which was it's very interesting navigating both communities, and that was like the first step of like culture shock for me. And then when I was 14, my mom passed away, and that was devastating for me as a 14-year-old kid because she took her own life. And I did not understand what it meant or what, how that was even possible. But it, took a major toll on me that year. But what I did to cope with that experience was I poured myself into sports. And I think a lot of people, when we deal with grief, we all have to find our own coping mechanisms, and hopefully those are healthy things that we can kind of pour into. Some people fall into, drugs and alcohol, and that's what you don't want to do. But for me, I just poured myself into sports. So I was a 4-sport athlete. I played football, basketball, baseball, and I ran track. And that was like around the clock, fall season, winter season, spring season, I was actively playing some type of sport. And in summer, we went to the courts and hooped all summer too. So what that really translated into was earning a scholarship to Hampton University for track and field. So I ended up becoming a state champion in long jump, triple jump. And that, by the grace of God, earned me a scholarship, because had it not been for sports, I may not have even went to college, or maybe end up at a local school that maybe wasn't, going to really change my trajectory.
How were you as a student?
I wasn't a great student.
Okay.
I was probably like a 2.9 type of student who did just enough to get by. I was excellent at sports, and so that gave me fulfillment and like identity and self-worth, where I knew that I was talented. And it wasn't that I was not a smart guy. I've always been a smart kid. I've been street smart and I've been book smart, but I just didn't apply myself to school, to academics. And I don't know why that was then, but looking back now, I feel like something innately inside of me knew that the system wasn't set up for me. And I didn't necessarily need all of these things to be successful. And I don't know why I felt that, but my actions showed that, right? Looking back, and I evaluate my 4 years in high school, was like my actions show that I knew that I was going to be successful even without being an A student.
Got you. And so when you went to college, what did you study?
In college, I studied sport management.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started off. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, at that time, is that something that you're going to college, you're an athlete? Are you looking ahead like, okay, I love sports, I'm gonna get into sports management, or looking further down where you're like, no, it's gonna be some type of entrepreneurship thing? What were you thinking back then?
Well, at that point, it was go for what you know.
Gotcha.
And sports, coming from 4-sport athlete, understanding that industry, watching games, always being consumed by sports, it just felt like that was somewhere where I could have success. But I did feel kind of, it was a bit mystified as to what I should major in.
Got you.
I didn't have, my dad wasn't really around. I mean, my parents were in and out of my life for the entirety, and my mom was gone. My dad he actually had mental illness after the military. So around those years, he was kind of like in and out of the picture. So, and I didn't have any real mentors or any cousins that were at that time like, yo, we're going to put our arm over your shoulder and let you know how to navigate this thing. So for me, a lot of it was just trial and error, making decisions and trying to make it work. So I chose sport management, had better grades in college, still running track and field collegiately, and had success on the track, had success academically, still A, B student. And then I graduated into that space wanting to be an agent. So I started my career off wanting to be a sports agent. But that was 2008. There was the Great Recession. So my generation, my class came into this era of like hard to get jobs.
Yeah.
Real estate is just like dismantled, and there's like no one's hiring. So on top of that, the sports industry is really hard. So for me, I was
Right.
working
Right.
at Dillard's, I was working at DTLR, and then I was even working at Sprint, which is actually one of my favorite jobs in life, and I can tell you
Why?
why. Um, yeah, so that's kind of how it kicked off for me. I didn't get my big break until I was working at Sprint, and I ended up getting my foot in the door as a sports agency.
Got you. So talk about why Sprint was one of your favorite jobs.
So I was in a place where I felt underemployed
Mm.
throughout those years working in retail. And I actually landed that Sprint job on Twitter where I went into the Sprint store, met some of the people that worked there. They followed me on Twitter. I followed them back. And then they tweeted like about an opportunity at Sprint. And I followed up with them and ended up getting a job at Sprint because I hated the retail. So I was like, let me work at
Mm.
Sprint, a little bit more technical. So
Mm-hmm.
I was a technician at Sprint, and long story short, why this experience was the best position because I was a technician at Sprint. My job was to fix phones, and at this time it was like Androids and Samsungs mostly. iPhone wasn't really as big, and maybe like 2010. And it was a great job because working at the Sprint store, people don't realize, or maybe you do, is that you come in contact with a lot of different people.
Right. Right.
You know, you're like the hub of a lot of traffic. So for me, I was one challenged because I was dealing with like people who didn't know how to use their phone that well and thought it was broken, or B, just broke their phone and it was up to me to try to like fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or maybe some phones were just actually malfunctioning. So I had the challenge of like customer service, critical and technical thinking, you know, engineering to a sense, and then also just meeting so many people
Mm-hmm.
really helped my personal communication and business communication skills. Because I got a lot of opportunities. I actually started my first side hustle at that place, fixing the
Okay.
screen under the table, but you didn't hear that from me. Um, and you know, I learned just a lot about business, and I actually had a Google voice line. I mean, I kind of just
Oh wow.
I was always an entrepreneur at heart, and that was my first time taking a step out to actually do something entrepreneurial and make real money.
Yeah. No, if I can say this real quick, it's funny because a lot of people when they work their jobs, they go into their job like, man, I don't want to be here. I ain't learning nothing. Like this, that, and the fifth. But it seems like with you, that was the situation you were in. So you were going to take full advantage of your situation. You were going to learn as much as possible about business. You're going to be creative. You're going to find ways to make money, start a side hustle. So I love that you had that mentality of like, look, I'm going to go into this to see what I can get out of this and get the most out of this situation and learn and interact with people and improve my communication. So I definitely love that.
Mm-hmm. Hey man, what Jay-Z say? Put me anywhere on God's green earth, I'll triple my worth.
Hey, there we go.
Yeah,
I
bro.
feel
So
it.
it was cool. And I knew that wasn't the end for me. You know, I was
Yeah.
working that. It's almost like, you know, like you just said, you just got to make the best of your situation. And God, the universe, will make room for more.
Right, right. Absolutely. So, from working at Sprint, what was the next thing for you? At this point, you know you're destined for more and to do more. What was that next step for you from transitioning out of Sprint? Or maybe what was the next job you had?
Yeah, well, while I was working at Sprint, I was still actively pursuing sports opportunities. So
Okay.
I was, you know, applying for Nike, applying for agencies, um, just trying to get on a professional team, whatever I could do to get my foot in the door. I was actively applying. But what I did do to kind of make better use of my time is I decided to go back to grad school. So I ended up entering into Virginia State to get
Mm.
a marketing degree, master's in marketing, while I continue to do the job search. So I figure if I'm going to be here working underemployed, I might as well have a degree, a master's degree to add to beef up
Right.
my resume. So I was working at Sprint, getting a master's degree, and then I finally got another tweet that from a sports agency that they were hiring.
Wow.
And so I quickly followed up with them with my resume and got an opportunity to interview at this agency called Corporate Athletic Management at the time. Well, now it's called Paramount Sports and Entertainment, but then it was CAM. And it was in Norfolk, Virginia. So it's about 2 hours away from where I was living in Petersburg, Colonial Heights. Went out there for an interview, did a pretty good job, had to create a nonprofit organization for one of their players, a mock thing, which was great practice. Ended up getting the job, and it was an internship. But the caveat was I had to be out there at least 2 days a week. And knew I was in school. So me being like the crazy Spartan person that I am, I'm like, shit, nothing's gonna stop me from getting my foot in the door in this industry. This is the opportunity. So I literally was working at the sports agency on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then I would drive back the next day and go to work at Sprint and then go to class at Virginia State for marketing. So I was like a year and a half, I went back and forth. I was doing that. Luckily, I had a girlfriend who lived in Hampton, which is right in between Norfolk and Petersburg. So I would crash at her spot, do the boyfriend thing and then go either way I needed to go. So that was a really crazy experience, but I wouldn't change it for the world because I learned so much. I actually recruited my first client, NBA client, while I was working there.
What was maybe like something really critical that you learned in that process in that time?
Man, that's a really good question.
I know you probably got a bunch of them, but like, what was one thing that stuck out to you that you learned the most?
That you really can't control what happens, but you got to listen to the universe. The universe will actually send you signs as to what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to go, if you are aware and you pay attention. And I say that because I met this one kid while I was working actually, I skipped this whole part of it, but I'm not even going to go back. I actually got an internship with Nike before I worked at the agency. And while I was at this Nike internship, I was basically doing design sessions at nationally ranked high schools, basketball teams. I met a bunch of blue chip guys, Jabari Parker, like a bunch of guys around that era that were ultimately going to be NBA players. And I started to connect with some of them because I knew I wanted to still be an agent. So I was like kind of like building relationships on the side while I was doing the Nike gig. So fast forward to the internship at Nike being over. Now I'm at the agency with some contacts at Nike and some blue chip high school kids. Set me up really nicely. And it was all like kind of coming together. I'm like, okay, I see how this could work out for me. So I had a great relationship with one kid, basketball kid. He was a top 15 in the country, ESPN, McDonald's All-American, Jordan All-American. And him and I would text all the time. A kid named Mike Abongo.
If I see his face, I probably know who you're talking about.
He went to the University of Texas. I mean, keep in mind, this is like 2012. This is 2011 through 2013.
Yeah.
So, him and I had a good relationship, and, he knew that I had interest in representing him as a manager agent. And he kind of just, he respected my hustle and my business acumen. So I supported him. I used my own money to basically travel to North Carolina to then play UNC, to see them play UCLA. And ultimately, when he played at home in Texas, some shit came down where he basically got in big trouble. NCAA said he took money from an agent, Rich Paul, who is LeBron's agent, was basically going to be his agent too. And he's good friends with Tristan Thompson. He just went out there to visit them and basically train. It wasn't even funny stuff. It was really him just going to see his friend. And NCAA tried to make an example out of him, and he basically had to miss like 20 games of his sophomore season.
Wow.
Typically, a blue chip kid like him will go one and done. But
You
he
weren't doing
decided to
right.
come back and play for a second year to develop his skills and then go to the league. But that suspension hurt his draft stock a lot. It hurt his, his development a lot as well. So when he came back at the very end of the season, had a couple of good games, decided to declare for the draft. And that was that. He's from Toronto. He called me and said, bro, I want you to come to my draft party. And that was like, that for me was like confirmation that I was about to get in this business.
Right.
Because all the time we've been cool, when you about to get drafted, like you call the people you really rock with. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that industry is very cutthroat. So he could have easily been like, hey, bro, I'll hit you after I get drafted. Or, he could have done that anyway. But he called me. I booked the flight, went to Toronto, met his family, met his friends, having a draft party. Now, the way the universe is going to tell you where you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do was that he had a lot of speculation around where he would get drafted. He started off as a blue chip, but then had a lot of turmoil, which kind of made him ambiguous as to where he would get drafted. And first round went by, he didn't get drafted. Everybody kind of like tightening up. The parties get a little quieter. Second round goes by, half of the second round goes by. They get up, him, Rich Paul, his brother, his girlfriend, they get up and leave because it seemed like at that point he wasn't going to get drafted, and he did not get drafted, which was mind-blowing because of what his pedigree is. It just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So, I mean, I was devastated. He was obviously, devastated. But we all went back to his hotel, and he was in pretty good spirits. He's a high character guy, very positive guy. Even that, he wasn't even like flustered. He was a very strong kid, and he still is. But we all sat down. We're basically in the lobby. It's like dimly lit. I'll never forget this. Dimly lit lobby. We're all sitting there. It's very somber mood. It's, me, Mike, his girlfriend, his brothers, Rich Paul, Tristan Thompson, Corey Joseph. And we're all just sitting around like in the lobby, just like talking. And I'm like, man, I'm sitting here with these NBA guys, Rich Paul.
Yeah.
And it was crazy because I felt like that might be the last moment. It was the first moment and the last moment that I might actually be doing that.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, bro. And so I felt so fulfilled, but also like sad at the same time because I'm like, I don't know what the future holds for this. And as the story goes, that was the last time. At that point, I decided like he went to the G League, he went overseas, and like to me, I wasn't gonna do that all over again. Couldn't afford to do that all over again. So that was when the universe told me, pivot, go a different direction.
Was the first and last. Wow, that's crazy. So you're at a point where you probably dreamt about doing this for a very long time. Where does one pivot to at this point where they felt like this is it? This is the first and last time I'll be doing this. Where did you pivot to?
I went home, lived with my dad.
You like, I pivot home.
I went home for like 6 months, lived with my dad. I went all out, bro. I gave everything I had. Even my financial situation was like out there. So was living with my dad. Which actually was another great experience because, like I said, my dad had mental illness for a while, and he had just gotten like disability from the military. And so for him, that was important because it gave him like some stability. He basically had income to pay for his crib, his food, his health care, and had medicine to make sure he could stay like, in a good headspace. So that for me was like almost one of the first times since I was real little to actually live with him and be like, spend time with him on a day-to-day. So it wasn't all bad. Even then it was like some real special moments and quality time with my pops. But work-wise, bro, I went home, I was down, but I was not out. I was reading, I was reading so many books, bro. I was listening to so much audio. I was still hitting up people at Nike because I have relationships. So I'm like, let me just keep hitting them, applying for opportunities with Nike, get my foot back in the door with that. And that's ultimately what I did. I ended up getting a job as a Nike brand coordinator at Dick's Sporting Goods. And then I flipped that to actually getting on full time at Nike in DC 2013. And that was when nothing was the same.
So how old were you at this age at this time?
This was 2013. So I was probably 27, 28.
So at this point, I mean, you mentioned early on that you didn't have really any mentors. So, and a lot of times in our day and age, everybody recommends that you got to have a mentor. You got to have a mentor. And honestly, I kind of came up the same way as you did. I really didn't have a mentor growing up and didn't really have anybody to look up to. Like you said, it was all trial and error. Same thing for me. So, what are some of the ways that you got around that? What are some, because I know you mentioned you were reading a lot of books recently or in that time, listening to audio and whatnot. What are some other things that you were doing that you would recommend to people out there that may not have a mentor or somebody to look up to? What are some things that you would tell them to do, to keep improving on themselves?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, one, virtual mentors.
Yeah.
That is gold. And in this day and age, in this era, there's so much free game online. There's so many great speakers, business leaders, personal development leaders that you can just subscribe to, tap into, and find that mentorship that you need.
Right.
That's really how I've gotten to where I am, is this virtual mentorship, bro. I have so many dope people that I've listened to, one being like Jim Rohn, who's somebody I really like, Les Brown, and this on the personal development tip. They really kind of shaped me. And then obviously books. Number two was just reading, bro. Like there's so many great books. Think and Grow Rich. Man, don't even get me started on books like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, The Alchemist. All of those books
I love The Alchemist.
for personal development are transformative. And The Alchemist was really about paying attention to the signs in the universe too. And that book really got me hip. So when that stuff went down with Mike in the NBA, I saw that. Because of The Alchemist, I realized that this was like a message that I needed to make another move.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. For me, same thing, man. Digital mentors. Mine was Eric Thomas. When I was 17, 18, came across his video and it was like, boom, just changed my life. And we'll listen to him every single week. And it was like, he was like right there with me. You know what I'm saying? Like shaping my mindset and helping me. And I always say, I'm going to meet him one day. I'm going to thank him for that because he for sure shifted my mindset. And like you said, reading, they say all the answers are in the books. We just don't, especially from our communities, we just don't open up these damn books.
Yeah, bro. ET is the truth. And if you hide $1 in a book, no one will ever find it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
For
the
sure.
like you who are really going to get it.
Yeah, really going to get it. We got a couple dollars. You know what I'm saying? So, all right. So dope. You're at Nike now. I'm thinking like, okay, what was the shift from working a job to entrepreneurship? What was that shift that you're like, okay, it's time for me to go out and do my own thing, and really provide for myself and be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, man. So I would say probably 2015,
Gotcha.
2014, 2015, I started to feel creatively stifled. Believe it or not, working at Nike. I mean, I was doing some amazing things, working like global activations, like Super Bowl, All-Star Weekend, World Basketball Festival. I was learning how to like activate these major events and learning how to integrate stories into those activations and get consumer engagement. And so I actually was getting some really great experiences. Then also on the retail side, just learning about product and things like that. But it was very restricting and everything was like initiative driven where you just had to kind of follow directions and execute. And for me, I didn't have the role that would allow me to flourish and serve at my highest capacity. So when I would apply for those roles, I was getting beat out by like the white girl from Stanford or, whoever someone had in mind that just wasn't me. And so I missed about 2 or 3 opportunities And what the breaking point for entrepreneurship is when the girl who was in DC who had this role called the Ekin, which is like pretty much like a brand expert in these different markets. And there's one in pretty much every major city, and they're just like the brand expert to like help coach the stores on the product, help integrate with like local schools, and host their own like personal events in that market on behalf of the brand. And that was the role that I really wanted, because that kind of was my vibe. And when there was the girl that was in DC, I connected with her and I wanted to help and support her. And I did that, right? And I was, plugging her in and kind of leveraging my network to help her. And I realized she would call me every once in a while and ask me kind of like for the answer. And I was like, yo, this is crazy. I can't do this I can't work here anymore. I'm like, because they're not giving me my shot. They're not giving me the space I need to be my best self. So immediately I just started a blog. I went home that day, opened up my iPad with YouTube, and then got my laptop, and I just learned how to build a website. So I just step by step built a WordPress website and started a blog from there. It was called jbsfoodforthought.com. And I already had a pretty good social media presence through all this time. Always actively growing my personal brand. And I just took that personal brand from social and created some digital real estate that I owned, and decided I was just going to create content, whether it would be like inspirational content, whether it be kind of like a personal journal about my life, or I would feature other people to create visibility and inspire the next generation, just like you're doing with your podcast. And so at first I was just a blogger. And that's how I started my entrepreneurial journey. And I started to say, okay, I'm going to pour my energy into this as the outlet for the frustration at Nike.
So what came first, Shine Hard Family or Bailey Media Group?
Shine Hard Family was
okay.
Was
really doing the not
of the
not
blog.
To cut you off. Okay, not to cut you off. I was gonna say you've been doing the interviews for, it looks like 5+ years or something crazy, right?
Yeah, bro. Yeah. I started doing the interviews in 2014. So part of the blog was Shine Hard. It was like food for thought, fruits of labor, and Shine Hard. And Shine Hard was the part of the blog where I would feature Black millennials to highlight excellence in different industries and kind of create a blueprint and a role model for others to follow. Because we know that a major impediment for Black youth is visibility and representation. We don't see opportunity. All we see is you play ball, you're in the streets, you go to the military, or you get into some type of trouble. So that is an underrated factor into how successful someone can be. So that was like my way of kind of providing a solution for that problem. And that part of the blog just took off.
So now talk about what Shine Hard, what the family has kind of transitioned to into today.
Yeah, man. So consistency is everything, man. And I did an interview every week for like 36 weeks in season 1, and in season 2,
competition.
Yeah, bro. I was obsessed, man. Once I had something that I felt like was really impactful and was liberating me from that frustrating place, because when I was at Nike, bro, I was sleeping in the car during my lunch break, bro. Like I was so depressed that I was just like,
wow.
I was depressed, bro. Like I just couldn't. Yeah. I was frustrated, man, and I hated going to work. And it's crazy to think that, but that's how I felt. But I couldn't leave my job, and this also got me to DC and where I really wanted to be. So I felt very liberated by the fact that I could create something that I owned and that people were receiving it, and it was inspiring people, and it was working. So I stayed consistent. 2014, 2015, 2016, people started asking what type of organization is this, and I decided we would be a nonprofit. So we became incorporated through DC, and decided that our mission would be to close the racial wealth gap. And I thought about that because looking back at my background, I realized that the level of wealth and access that you have can really change the experience that you have in this country. So I wanted to show people how to acquire wealth, how to create income, and really just learn more about the wealth that we already possess. Because people really focus a lot on financial when they think about wealth, but wealth is also like your history and your heritage, your family tree, your ancestry. It's also, creating life insurance. It's also about creating a will or trust for your next generation. It's getting into real estate. It's entrepreneurship. It's personal development. There's so many layers to wealth that people just overlook, that I wanted to just show people how to comprehensively become a wealth builder. And that's what Shine Heart's mission has been ever since 2016.
No, I absolutely love that, especially the part where you brought up consistency, because I see you have been through what I'm going through right now with bringing on guests every single week, looking to inspire people. So it's really inspiring to see you have done it, and you have put out so much content and whatnot. For me, it's like it's the same thing. There's a lot of parallels between from what I'm hearing and what I'm going through as well, because I'm at a point, I won't say it on the podcast, but I'm at a point right now where I'm looking to transition out of some things, and the podcast makes me feel liberated, makes me feel good, makes me feel like I'm making a change into people's lives and into the world. And like you said, it's like this is where you want to invest more time into, right? So, man, I love that. It's really interesting to see and talk to someone that has gone through what you're currently going through right now. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, sure. Bro. It's a beautiful thing, man. Whatever you are believing in right now, it can happen, bro. Like whatever you feel like you're onto something and you have a bigger vision for what you're trying to do, it can happen. Bro. Like it really does. You just got to stay consistent and really flip into where I am today. That work, building that blog, staying up hella late, all times of the night, working on content, planning and executing and marketing and scheduling shit on Hootsuite, all those nights where I'm like, there's no revenue, there's no monetary return on any of this investment, energy and time wise. But I just knew that it would create a body of work that would be valuable, that would become an asset to me in some form. And I get the skills and the relationships. So there was like always seeing the value in the tough situation, always, seeing the glasses half full really helped me navigate those really tough times. And me getting a role at Google is greatly because of my work at Shine Heart.
So before we get into Google real quick, I'm curious, talk to us about the impact of the conversation that you had with all those different entrepreneurs on Shine Heart, and maybe give the audience like a reoccurring characteristic that all these entrepreneurs had. What was something that you noticed that all of them had?
Ambition, faith, a strong belief in their value, their ability to make an impact, a desire to be more than they were currently. I've interviewed probably over 200 people over the last, I guess 5 years now, maybe more if you think about panels and all the other things. But, when I first started Shine Hard, I took my sports industry background into that endeavor where, as an agent or a coach, you got to recruit, you got to identify talent. You got to see something in somebody that other people just don't see.
Right.
And that was kind of my secret sauce with Shine Hard, where I had a network of friends from Hampton or other schools. And then I would know people who were like the dope, the cool people, the successful people, the people who were like, I just saw something in certain people or whatever, you know. And my plan was to diversify in industry, but really highlight what I felt like was the nation's top Black millennial leaders.
Mm.
And a lot of them at that point were kind of just burgeoning out, like they were just getting started. So I would balance like, maybe you're not the number one Black female actress out right now, but you are a Black female actress who's having success. So I want to feature you, but just show people what the life of an actress looks like and the barriers that you're, you know, experiencing and how you're overcoming those struggles. You know, maybe you're a journalist or sports journalist, or maybe you're a doctor or a plastic surgeon or a lawyer. I just was kind of not battling, but like delineating between some people who are up and coming, who are just phenoms, or people who are already like pretty much doing their thing. And so I can kind of get a balance of both. And as you start getting more people, you can kind of build your resume where, you know, oh, I know that person you featured last week. I rock with them. So off the strength of them being on your podcast and your show, I definitely come on too. And so I started to build a really strong body of work of like this like-minded Black millennial excellence, high achievers, influencers. And that really became the signature of the brand. So after a while, it became more of like, you know, people wanted to be featured. You know, people will hit me up and say, hey, can I get featured? They'd be pitching to me to become a part of this like unique fraternity of individuals who have been on this platform. And when I got to that point, I'm like, yeah, I knew that my work had paid off, you know?
Mm-hmm. For sure. So you mentioned becoming a Google digital coach. You want to talk to us a little bit more about that? Because I'm not going to lie, before you, I'd never even heard of it.
Yeah, man. So the digital coaches program is really created to bridge the digital divide for Black and Latinx small business owners. Google has identified that minority groups like, underrepresented groups, I should say, like Black, Latinx women are the fastest growing segment in entrepreneurs in the country right now, but they're greatly underfunded, undertrained, under-resourced. So as part of the early corporate responsibility or racial equity endeavors, the program was created. And I've been one of the coaches since 2019 in DC. And what that really means as the DC digital coach is that I provide free workshops and trainings for small business owners in my market. And it's very serendipitous because back when I was at Nike, I wanted this role where I could kind of be the market ambassador and kind of host my own events and create and add value to the community. And fast forward to now, I'm working at Shine Hard. Google taps me because I'm doing the work. I'm using digital skills and digital products to host events for Black and brown entrepreneurs. And I'm a business owner myself. And so Google was looking for people like that in these markets. And I, was at the right place at the right time. So I've been doing this work since then. And really the mission is just to accelerate the Black economy through entrepreneurship and through wealth generation.
And some of the virtual workshops you offer are money management skills, using YouTube to grow your business, and learning Google Ads. So I think that's pretty dope that you're teaching the community about those subjects for sure. Yeah. So I know we're approaching 45 minutes here, man. If you can quickly touch on Bailey Media Group, we didn't touch on that very much, but I'd love to know more about that and some of the work you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, man. So that's my newest company. It's a boutique consulting agency where I pretty much allow myself to contract independently, where I have Shine Hard, I have my role at Google. And from those two things, I'm being tapped frequently to move as a micro influencer for small businesses or big companies that have multicultural initiatives. Small businesses that need consulting, or organizations or business entities that need digital coaching. And I'm being asked to do that, when you're called to do it, you have to find a way to serve. And, it's obviously an opportunity to create a stream of income. So
Yeah.
that business was created to serve and fill that need
Mm-hmm.
in my community and for my family.
That's awesome. Couple more questions and we're going to wrap this thing up. Um, Fast forward it. We're going to fast forward past 2020. But I'm curious, what are some ways that you have prepared for 2021? I know we're about 6, 7 days in. What are some things that you have done to prepare for this year? I know we're like 6 days in, but it's still not too late for other people to do the same and, start this year off correctly. What are some suggestions you make to the people?
Yeah, man, you got to set your goals and write them down. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't write it down, your chances of it becoming real are decreased by 50%.
Wow.
By writing
Hmm.
down your goals, you're 50% more likely to achieve your goals. And so that's the first step, is just writing it down. I mean, honestly, it's
Mm-hmm.
like 80% of your goal is writing it down, and the other 20% is executing. So what I did, I do this every year, is I basically have a Google Doc where I just write down my goals in every area of my life. So it was like master business, master health, master relationship, master family, master behaviors. And then I have like a bunch of just tasks or goals for that year, whether it's qualitative or quantitative.
Mm-hmm.
And those are just things I look at. Really, I write them down and I don't even look back at them. Like I've done this literally for like the past 5 years. I kind of copy the document and just realign for the new year because it's new things and
Mm-hmm.
maybe bigger goals. But that is a beautiful thing because at the end of the year, so December, I actually pulled up my 2020 document and looked at it. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
haven't looked at it for probably like 10 months and just kind of forgot
Right.
about some of it. But I'm like, man, going down, you crossing stuff off. You're like, oh, wow. Like, damn, I forgot I
That's
wrote
dope.
this down. It's like, it's crazy to see how you can accomplish things in your subconscious because I wrote it down and I put it somewhere and I just got back to work and I haven't stopped. I've been literally doing everything that I could do. But even in this year, no one knew the pandemic would hit. No
Mm-hmm.
one knew that all this social unrest would hit and that brands would be thinking about black equity, racial equity, and that would be a trend. We knew, none of us knew what was going to happen this year. So for me, just the fact that I was still able to just accomplish so many goals, it
Mm.
speaks to the power of writing it down, man.
Right.
The
Being
universe made it
consistent.
happen. It wasn't even me. I just had to keep staying the path.
Wow. Wow. That's dope. All right. So wrapping this thing up, man, I really appreciate you coming on this podcast. But before I let you go, I always have my guests give the audience one last gem, one last piece of advice. It can be business related, whatever, life related, sports related. If you can give the audience one last piece of advice, what would it be? And we can end it on that note.
Well, I'm not sure exactly who your audience is, but I'm a black man living in
Mm,
an era where we can change the course of society. We can be revolutionary.
talk
And
about it.
what I see online is that, people are waking up. Black people are waking up. People of color are waking up, and we have a different mindset about what it means to be black. So the advice that I would leave with you all is the same advice I leave with all of my community members when I'm hosting Google sessions, Shine Heart events, is we all have a responsibility to become an entrepreneur, whether it's on the side as a hustle, whether it's getting into real estate, owning your home. I think that everyone should create an additional stream of income. And after you've started to create income for yourself outside of your job, the next thing that we have to do is buy black first.
Hmm.
That's how you support the community, is how you allocate your dollar. So we know that our vote is our political, the ballot is our political vote, the dollar is our economic vote. So vote for people that you support and that support you. And lastly, lift as you climb. So remember that generational wealth is money, it's information, it's networks, and it's access. So as you're growing as an individual or as a business owner, don't forget to reach back and invest in the next generation of young leaders that are just like you. And if they ask you why, let them know that we are the leaders of right now.
Boom. I love that. Couldn't have said it any better, man. I love that. Where can people find you? Let them know your social media handles, any websites. Where can people reach out to you and get some of the resources that you're putting out there?
Yeah, man. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn at one Johnny Bailey. You can find me on Instagram at one Johnny Bailey. If you want to learn more about the Shine Hard family, just visit shinehardfamily.org or Shine Hard Family on Instagram. Bailey Media Group is also Bailey Media Group. So wherever you want to find me, I'm online. I'm not hard to find. Always happy to connect. I'm very approachable, and get at me, bro. Let's tap in. Let's make a change this year.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. With that being said, this was an amazing episode. I really appreciate your time. For the people out there listening, if you can do me a huge favor and just share this episode with one other person out there that may need to hear this, that would be amazing for me. With that being said, it's your boy Chris, and I'll catch you guys next week. Peace.